Hi, everybody. This is Ken Vandermark, and I'm here with Jasper Stadhouders, talking to us from Tilburg, Netherlands. Jasper's an incredible musician, based in the Netherlands, currently sort of residing in Berlin, although in a little hiatus in Tilburg. Thanks a lot for being here, Jasper. It's great to see you. And Jasper's got a bunch of, I think, brand new performances, some solo stuff. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So this is the Option program. We're on every Monday, thanks to Experimental Sound Studio in Chicago. Experimental Sound Studio is doing an incredible array of concerts under the quarantine concert programming, and we're part of that. So thanks for being here, and we're going to hit this first piece of Jasper's now, and stay tuned for the next hour. He's going to be our guest. It's great to see you play again, man.
Thanks.
It's like as soon as you start, it's like, oh yeah, okay, beautiful. Is that a new guitar? I don't recognize that one.
No, I've had this one for quite a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I brought it on some tours with Made to Break already.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man, obviously it's been because I didn't recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to do some more shows soon. I'm losing track of my mental acuity. So is that performed in Tilburg where you are now, I'm guessing?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
Downstairs in my dad's studio.
Oh, man. Yeah, and speaking of your father, he's a music teacher, and you came up in a family where music was pretty significant. I think your brother's also a guitarist as well. Can you talk a little bit about your background, like how you came up in that environment?
Yeah, so I grew up in Tilburg, small town in the south of the Netherlands, and both my parents are music teachers. My mom teaches piano, my dad teaches guitar. They both have a conservatory background in both classical and jazz music. And so yeah, music was just always around in the house. And I think I was 6 years old when I first started getting guitar lessons from my dad. My brother's 2 years older. He was already playing guitar. And I guess as every young kid, he looks up to his older brother. And the way I remember it is that I also wanted to play guitar, not because of my dad, but because of my brother. And yeah, so I started taking lessons. And I remember quite clearly that both my parents said that, okay, if you want to have guitar lessons, you're going to have to practice. Otherwise, we won't teach you. So it was definitely not forced, but it was a very good check in a way, because of course my parents knew every day if I practiced or not. Yeah. Yeah. So
Did you go to conservatory afterward, or how did you? What was the trajectory from there?
Yeah. So I moved to Amsterdam when I was 17, right after high school, and then I went to the conservatory there to study jazz and guitar. Um, and Yeah, and when I started guitar at a young age, it was at first more like simple children's songs and classical guitar a bit, and then pretty soon my dad started playing Jimi Hendrix for us, and so from age 8 or 9, I got my first electric guitar, which is also a white Stratocaster. And, yeah, then I learned a lot of Jimi Hendrix songs and whatever. So yeah, pretty soon I left the classical thing be what it is for, and and the nice thing that was that my dad had a lot of students in the same age group, so he put us together in ensembles.
Oh.
So basically since I was 7 or 8 or 9, I was playing with other musicians that were my same age. So that was really important for him in his teaching practice, to put students together to really know what it is to make music together. Yeah, that was extremely valuable. And then pretty soon after that, my parents were already listening to jazz, and I also got interested in that and started learning it. And Tilburg has quite a nice scene for music, quite a history also. So there was weekly jam sessions as well at a venue called Paradox. You've played there. And so every Tuesday night, my parents would allow me to go to these jam sessions, even if it was just midweek. And yeah, I learned so much from watching older and professional musicians play together, and then being able to play with them. Wow. And I remember, I think if I was home by midnight, then it was okay. Then I had to go to school the next morning again.
Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, that's such a unique situation. I mean, that background, like to be able to start playing so young, study with your folks, essentially, be playing with other musicians at such a young age and ensembles, going to see and perform in a jam session. That's a unique situation. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was really lucky. And yeah, it's like I learned probably the most from those years. And yeah, I have to thank my parents for that, for sure. My friends at school were all jealous that I was allowed to go out to the bars. Yeah.
And when you went you decided to take jazz studies at the conservatory in Amsterdam?
Yeah, exactly.
And just out of curiosity, like hearing that first piece, I mean, I think if people are familiar with the idea of jazz in a more mainstream way, going from that to what you just performed, I mean, obviously there's a lot of time in there, a lot of things you've experienced. And can you explain that leap, that aesthetic change, that leap to that kind of playing and improvising?
Yeah, so I guess in my teens I was really coming from more mainstream jazz, let's say. And also when I decided to go to Amsterdam, that's the music I really wanted to study. But then when I moved there, I met some musicians that were part of the free improvised music community. And I had no idea that even existed, really. And when I started to gigs there, like venues like Zaal 100 and Baars, of course, just a whole new world opened up for me. And I remember it was pretty, almost immediately, this visceral reaction this music gave me. Mm-hmm. And I pretty soon thereafter, I lost interest in studying jazz in a conservatory way, let's say. And yeah, so I had a period of just experimentation, and also when I was still in school in the conservatory, I guess I kind of started to hate the guitar, like this love-hate relationship that I guess many musicians have with their instruments. So yeah, at some point, I for a while I tried everything I could to not sound like a guitar. So experimenting with effect pedals and prepared guitar stuff, and yeah. So I guess maybe that's that's it.
I mean, you said there was like such a paradigm shift when you encountered the more free music. Can you mention some of the players that you saw that had the biggest impact on you at that time when you were like just, a late teenager, 17, 18?
Yeah, there was a concert series that my friends Harald Eispe and Oscar Jan Hoogland were organizing, but yeah, almost 15 years ago now. And it was also in a very specific acoustic space. It was a place called Tussen de Bogen in Amsterdam. And it's a curved brick ceiling, and the trains pass over it. So every few minutes you hear this rumbling noise. And since the arch of the ceiling, the acoustics, they fly all over. And I remember clearly the first concert where the switch really flicked for me was a duo of Toby Delius and Wilbert de Jode.
Wow.
Yeah, that just blew my mind. And there was like this whole sensation of like improvised music is so much about being in the moment. And but I felt like every single millisecond moment lasted like an eternity. And yeah, it was just completely mind blowing.
Wow. Wow.
And,
Yeah, there are such tremendous players.
Yeah.
So incredible, man.
Yeah.
When I started working with you, and we'd be on tour and talking about different kinds of things. You mentioned seeing Andy Moore and Terrie Ex, Terrie Hessels, in concert, and how that had impact on your use of pedals that you've been exploring, like you said just now, the pedals and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about that concert? Was it with the X, or was it an improvised music concert with them?
Actually, it was with you and Paul.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was at the Baars and
Okay, yeah.
with Lean Left. But
okay.
I remember there were two sets, and the first set Terrie and Andy started as a duo, and the second set you and Paul started as a duo, and then the others joined. And yeah, people had told me about the X, and but I'd never heard them before. Just heard about them, and then I went to the Baars to see that gig, and yeah, when I saw Terrie and Andy play that opening, was about 10 minutes maybe before you and Paul joined.
Maybe not even 10. That's 10.
Yeah, that's maybe a bit long. And yeah, it was such a different guitar sound and approach to playing, that coming from this very kind of conservatory jazz language, where I was always trying to play correct and right and whatever. It was like, wow, okay, you can also treat the guitar like a sound source, and indeed, I was already trying to get away from all that before I saw that concert. But yeah, basically when I saw that, the next day I never touched my guitar pedals again, and I thought like, okay, if I should really just dig into the instrument. Instead of relying on external things like pedals. And it's not that I have nothing against use of pedals. There are some great players that use them. But for me, I just, I didn't really get to the point where I used them as an instrument. And so I decided to kind of dive into the guitar and really imagine what it is for me. Like, almost forgetting about my technical knowledge and stuff, and yeah, just completely rethink how I can approach that instrument as a sound source.
Wow. And, well, let's listen to another piece. This next one, the first one was on guitar. Is this also a guitar improvisation, or?
Yeah, it's all guitar today.
All guitar today. Okay. So everybody, we're talking with Jasper Stadhouders. If you have any questions for Jasper, please just put them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them during our talk. We're going to listen to another improvised piece now. And thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Option, and Jasper Stadhouders is our guest. Hi, everyone. That was Jasper Stadhouders providing some unbelievable guitar playing for our enjoyment in the evening over in most of Europe and in the afternoon here in Chicago. I've got some questions from people who have tuned in, but before I jump to those, if it's cool, Jasper, I'd like to ask a little bit about your thinking with structure and duration for an open improvisation. Let's say working solo, the first piece was, let's say, more compressed and that was more expansive. When you begin that last piece, did you were you thinking like a longer duration, or did it just end up that way? Are you thinking from a structural standpoint when you start, or is it just open and you let it ride?
I was thinking that I would do about 30 minutes. So that was my only preconceived idea, really. Yeah, and usually I think 30 minutes happens to be kind of a natural or organic time frame. Mostly when I do solo, when I've done solo concerts, there's usually the first piece that I start with is about 30 minutes or so. So it just sort of ends up that way. Yeah, and when it comes to structure, it's quite interesting because in a way I don't try to think of a structure beforehand, but kind of let it evolve while playing. And I try to be super attentive and in the moment, but at the same time also have overview of where I've been where I've been before and where I might go. And yeah, with the challenge with solo playing, of course, especially when you decide to just completely improvise, is to keep the element of surprise somehow, like to surprise yourself without interaction from other musicians, and especially like this without an actual audience, where I just was playing in front of a few mics and a camera. But yeah, so there's a few things that help with this element of surprise for me. For instance, I was using an amplifier as well, and the guitar that I have is completely hollow, the body, so it starts generating feedback at very odd places that I cannot predict really. So those are external things that kind of put me off and kind of get me back in the current moment to play around with that. And sometimes it also works the other way around. It's, if I end up in a certain musical situation which can take, which kind of asks for being sustained, then I like, that kind of gives me pause to think while keeping that going, to try and find a new direction out of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of like finding ways to push at the narrative that you started and find different ways to generate tension by, you know, sustaining a thing or pushing against a thing, and finding. I know I wrestle with that element of surprise in solo music. That's like the ongoing thing. I try not to think about it because it's so perplexing for me that if I start thinking about it, then it shuts me down, because I'm like, well, how am I supposed to surprise myself? So I try to say, well, somehow I'll do it. I don't know how. But yeah, I just wonder about that with other people, you know, working in solo context, like what they do, and having things that kind of generate things you can't control. Is a great tool to get that to happen. You have to deal with a problem you didn't expect, you know, you could say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's funny, like watching people in this context where it's so hard to do music with other musicians. You know, a lot of people are working on solo material, or having to deal with that context because that's the musical option that's available right now. And it's interesting when I listen to musicians that I work with playing solo, I find myself like in the space of like, oh, wanting to react. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, oh yeah, this is where.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as compared to like hearing someone that I don't know as well play solo. It's like I can be more not passive, but like listening and experience it. But like watching you, it's like it's really hard to disengage and like want to be like playing along. It's kind of I didn't notice that until today. I got some questions from people who tuned in, and if you'd be up for answering them. One's from Kevin Miller, who would like to know what you've been listening to lately and what sources of inspiration you've had during this last, more than a year.
Yeah, wow. Funnily enough, in the last weeks, I found myself not listening so much to music at all. But before that, actually last December, more or less, I was in Amsterdam and I started recording a lot of duos with musicians there. People I've been playing with for years, but never as a duo. So a lot of the times when I was listening to music was actually just going back to recordings I'd made myself for potential releases and stuff. But I did have a period of listening a lot to Afro-Cuban music from this group called, wait, let me look it up so I don't say it right. The Grupo Changui de Guantanamo. That's like basically what it's been like is if I found a record that I like, it's just on repeat every day. Yeah. But yeah, for the rest, I haven't listened to all that much music recently.
Is there any other things you've been like? I know that you have interest in cinema a bit and stuff like that. Is there anything else outside of music that you've kind of gravitated to get some creative energy coming from somewhere, or is it you're an amazing reader, so maybe some novels or anything like that?
I've actually been reading this book New Dutch Swing by Kevin Whitehead.
Oh yeah.
It's funny that I've never read it because I've lived in Amsterdam for so long, but it's about the history of Dutch improvised music, and yeah, that's been really fun to read, like all the stories and how it all came together in the Netherlands. And yeah, for the rest, taking walks, being outside. Yeah. Practicing, composing a bit. Yeah, just finding ways to keep busy. But, it's to be honest, it's just challenging to stay inspired in this period because I realize how much I feed off interaction with people and other musicians, the traveling, everything.
Yeah, I hear you. It's like this period is like I was aware of that before. Like I never took any of those things for granted before, but this period I realized how significant all that interaction is to generate new ideas. I mean, inspirations. It's all of those things: the social interaction, the travel, the talking, the playing. It's just like one amalgam of information that is so crucial. And I knew it before, but wow, the last year has really put a big, thick underline under all that awareness. It's important. You mentioned about being in Amsterdam for so many years, and you're such a central part to that scene. Not so long ago, you made a move to resettle or to settle in Berlin. What motivated that change in location?
Basically, I've been coming to Berlin for maybe some 10 years or so. Usually at least twice a year for a week or two, sometimes even more. And it's just always a city, like from the first time I went there to play, that's longer ago, maybe 12 years ago. I spent 3 weeks there. And I played around in the small venues and went to a lot of gigs. And that was also right at the start when I learned about improvised music. And I just always thought like, wow, I have to live in Berlin at some point. Mm-hmm. And I never did until now, because I was really happy that I stayed in Amsterdam for so long, because Amsterdam is really a great city to live, and the scene is really fantastic, and there's a lot of possibilities there, and so many people passing through, and but yeah, it basically felt like Berlin was always my second home, and then I thought that the timing was right. That was right before the lockdown as well, so stuff was still happening. There were some small gigs even in September and October and stuff, and I thought like, wow, let's just try and live there for a while. Yeah, that's basically it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, now with the current lockdown, it's all the reasons why I decided to live there are not happening there right now. So, so that's a bit of a challenge as well. But, and the other thing is, Berlin and Amsterdam are really close together, actually. Like under normal circumstances, it's only a 6-hour train ride. Mm. And so my idea is to be basically in both places. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, it's easy to maintain activity in each of those cities, because of the proximity. It's one of the amazing things about distances in Europe compared to the States. I got another question. One of my dogs has a question. This is from Jeff Guy. How do you face challenges like dynamics on guitar in an ensemble setting? Because the range of like quiet to loud can move a lot. And I'm going to silence my mic while you answer this so I can get rid of barking dog.
Okay. That's a good question. It's definitely one of the biggest challenges, because often I find myself being the only amplified instrumentalist in an ensemble with improvisers, and the guitar definitely has a tendency to be way too loud. It's also, amplifiers have a specific way of projecting sound. So often when the direction toward in which the speaker is pointed, it's like a beam of sound. And if one of the band members or an audience member happens to be directly in that beam, no one wants that. So often it also really depends on the acoustics of the space where I'm playing. But I think it was Andy Moore who I saw that doing the first time. He just turned around the speaker towards a wall or something to deflect the immediate sound. So that's also a trick I use often, and it depends also. I just have a very small amp that I can carry around, but on tour it's always a challenge because often you get to places by airplane or whatever, so you don't bring your own equipment, and often you have to face the challenge of playing through a way too big or powerful amp, and that's a challenge. But also the guitar that I'm using on these videos, it's actually designed as an acoustic guitar. The pickup was installed later, but I use both. So often I also just turn off the amplified sound. I see it basically as two instruments in one. And often I only use the acoustic sound without any mics or something. So hopefully
Well, I have to say, playing with you in Shelter and also in Made to Break, you're pretty masterful at dealing with the guitar and the acoustics of the electric instrument and the amp. So, as a horn player, I appreciate your awareness of that.
Thank you.
Jaap Blanc is tuned in and listening. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the group with Jaap that you're in. And how that came about and what it's like working with him in that project.
Oh yeah. Hey Jaap, you're watching. The band is called Retirement Overdue. It's a quartet with Frank Rosalie on drums, Miguel Petruccelli and myself on both guitar and bass. And Jaap, of course, on vocals and electronics. I think we've been playing for about 2-3 years or so. And the way I remember it, Jaap and I were part of a bigger project about Dada. It's a big theater music project. And Jaap was one of the special guests. And I remember he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I want to start a band again." He hadn't had a working band in quite a long time. And then he was thinking about some kind of punk aesthetic. So he asked me if I knew about guitarists and drummers that I'd like to work with. And then I suggested Miguel and Frank. And and then Jaap started bringing in compositions of his. And we rehearsed a few times, made a demo, and played some gigs together. And it's a really, really fun group to play with. It's the chemistry is really there. And what's really great about Jaap's compositions is they're really focused. Every piece really has a very clear concept, and it really informs the way we play them and also improvise with it. This is really inspiring.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's really one of my favorite, if not favorite, improvising vocalists, and his work with poetry and the band with you. It's just he's high level inspiration for me. He's incredible. Let's listen to some more of your music right now. We got another piece. We're talking to Jasper Stadhouders. If you got questions for him, put them in the chat. We're getting close to the end of the program, but we've got more time to hear some more music. And thanks for tuning in. This is Option, presented by Experimental Sound Studio. Hey everybody, we're still here with Jasper Stadhouders for a few more minutes, which is a pleasure. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk and present the music, Jasper. It's great to hear you and see you. And as we say every time we're meeting each other, the other musicians, we can't wait to get back into the same room again and do some music.
That's right.
And whatnot. I wanted to talk before we move to the rest of the day, so to speak, about one of your projects and as a leader called the Polyband. If you could talk a little bit about the ideas behind the music and what your goals are with the group, because it's very unique.
Yeah, the Polyband started in my mind a long time ago. Basically, I had a desire, after so many years of almost exclusively playing improvised music, I just had a desire to have a band which is really based on groove and riffs, actually. And what I had in mind is very long form stuff with very repetitive things. And it started out as a trio, actually, with a dancer and a drummer, and it just grew and grew and grew. And most of the instruments are doubled or even tripled, so a lot of guitars, a lot of drums. And then I wrote a composition which also kept expanding and expanding. And that one we've been playing for some years. And then at some point, what I had in mind was a really large group. And for that, I wrote a completely new piece, which lasts almost an hour and a half. And it's for 19 people, including sound engineer and 3 dancers. And that's a completely new piece that I wrote in 2019. And basically, it just deals with ideas about polytonality and polyrhythm in a large group context, which also involves a lot of improvising. And a lot of the instruments are doubled as well. There were 3 drummers and 2 percussions, 2 guitars, 2 trombones, vocals, cymbalom, Fender Rhodes, accordion, and bagpipes even. And basically, it was structured around a rhythmical grid where every all the rhythmic information fits on top of each other. So, and all the rhythmic information was written down on one page. So basically the sound image of rhythmically could be everything at the same time, or selections out of all the information. And the idea was, with so many people playing from this grid, and there will always be parts of the ensemble that were sticking to this rhythmical grid while others are improvising against it or on top. That was a dream for me to realize in a large ensemble structure. And it's incredible what comes up with that. It's,
Were you able to do any performances in 2019 with the new piece and that ensemble?
Yeah, we managed to play, I think, 3 or 4 concerts before the pandemic started.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And the plans to do more with it and possibly record it? I'm just really curious to see what it sounds like.
Yeah, at some point. But right now, to get a group that large together.
Yes.
Yeah. I do have live recordings from the premiere concerts. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
At some point, I maybe want to put them out. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but in this period, I'm also writing new stuff for the band.
Oh, okay.
Which is going to be a smaller ensemble again.
Wow. Okay, tremendous. Well, we have one more piece of music to hear, and I always like closing out with the music so people can listen before. And this is a composition you wrote for Steve Heather. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was his birthday.
Yeah.
And, funny. I woke up and I saw Facebook told me that it's Steve Heather's birthday. And for whatever reason, this ballad came out of it. So it's called Birthday Ballad. Yeah.
Well, we have Facebook to thank for something positive.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Jasper, again, thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out and talking about your music, playing your music. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to ESS for keeping the quarantine concerts going, the option Talks Music series going. Thanks to Ralph for doing the tech. And we'll see you all soon next Monday. I'm drawing a blank because my mind is shot, so I'll put that in the chat in 1 second. Who's going to be here? And I believe that that's going to be again at 7 p.m. Central Time. So Jasper, take care, keep safe.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thanks for everybody for watching. Yeah.
This goes out to Steve Heather, great drummer, great musician, super guy. Thanks everyone. See you all soon, hopefully in person.